Okay, welcome back to the afternoon session for the World Creativity and Innovation Week, day 2. We're in the afternoon. So happy that you're with us. We're very excited for this next presentation. I'm always interested in learning any tips and tricks about marketing that I possibly can, because as we learned from our earlier session with Jordan this morning, everybody needs to market everything. So very excited to hear Brendan and Holly Haggerty. They are going to be talking about Zen marketing, I believe was the name of the Zen and the Art of Effortless Marketing. Not so easy to say, but hopefully easier to market. So let me read a quick introduction. Marketing has always been a challenging subject, rife with contradictions, fads, and time and money sinkholes that don't produce what you were expecting. Is this the way that it must be? Or is there a different path, one that perhaps is more centered, mindful, and effortless? In their presentation, Zen and the Art of Effortless Marketing, Holly and Brendan of Haggerty and Haggerty Digital Services will provide you with some universal fundamentals that will help to silence the monkey brain of marketing chatter that often fills our thoughts on the subject. Holly and Brendan.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I'm here with my husband, Brendan Haggerty, and we're going to be talking about silencing the monkey brain of marketing that lives in all of our minds when we're trying to do this subject. And we're doing it with a series of slides. So Brendan, if you want to go ahead and share our first slide, we'll go ahead and jump right into it.
Let me get right on that.
All right. And while he's doing that, I just want to let everybody know that if you have any questions at all, please feel free to drop them right into the chat, and we'll be happy to answer them at the end once we get done with our slide presentation. There we are. So Zen and the Art of Effortless Marketing. So we'll just start out with this right now. Remember to just breathe. So everybody take a deep breath. And we're going to go on to the next slide. So Haggerty and Haggerty Digital Services is a full-service marketing company. We do website development and maintenance, social media management, CRM, which is basically your database, sales funnel consulting, digital advertising campaigns, and search engine optimization. So those are the primary services we do. However, we do consider ourselves a boutique. So we will jump in and just, if we see something that's needed, we'll see whatever we can do to help or direct our clients to the right place. So the big question, can marketing be effortless? And I love this because I do have a background in teaching. So from A to Z, from anxiety to Zen. So practical rules and steps you can take to improve marketing, not just marketing, but also your life. So what is Zen really? So Zen is pretty popular right now. It can even be considered a bit faddish, but factually it's for good reason. And it's because there's a lot of noise in everybody's life and we're all trying to calm it down. So there is a couple of definitions we'll go over. One first is the formal. The formal definition of Zen is it's something you are, expressing yourself moment to moment, and something you do. A disciplined practice to realize joy. So it's pretty deep and simple. The popular definition, the one that we use when we're throwing it around in conversation, is just generally means feeling peaceful and relaxed. And it's usually associated with some sort of mindful practice. The whole point of Zen is to suspend the rules we have superimposed on things and see the world as it is. And that's Alan Watts said that. He's a Zen Buddhist philosopher from the 1960s. And when we're looking at this quote, the reason we chose it is because we want to suspend the rules of marketing that people read. And it's very important to read and study the subject of marketing, but the more importantly is to see, it's to look and observe what's there. And that's really what this quote is all about. So now we're going to define marketing. What is it? So the formal definition is the action or business of promoting and selling products and services, including market research and advertising. But the fact is, for most of us, most businesses that we work with, It's a stressful but necessary part of my organization's survival, where I try to determine the right thing to sell more stuff. And that's what we're trying to move away from, because that's no fun. It's no fun to be stressed out and no fun to be worried about one's survival. So we're going to talk about that. Marketing is too important to be left to the marketing department. It was David Packard of Hewlett-Packard who said that. And the reason he said that is because if you leave marketing to just the marketing department, you forget the rest of the organization who are also very involved in marketing. In fact, the receptionist is a huge part of your marketing, the person who answers any phone call, whether during your hours or after your hours, the person who sends out your package on time, who packages it carefully. Every single aspect of your business is marketing. So you can't just leave it up to the marketing department. So can your marketing efforts be more Zen? Can you have more feelings that are peaceful and relaxed and less stress and less worry about survival? So that's what we're about to find out. All right, Brendan.
All right. So, to basically put this in perspective, we're talking about Zen, and a lot of people may have, heard about it. Maybe even some of you have read about it. But the main sort of person who brought Zen to the United States was Shunrun Suzuki, and he arrived in 1959 to bring sort of the Japanese Zen tradition to the U.S. He really sort of fell in love with America. In fact, he said, if I knew it would be like this, I would have come sooner. He was 55 when he arrived. He founded the San Francisco Zen Center, which still takes students to this day. And his book, which is called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, is really which was published in 1970, is really the premier book that really brought the idea of Zen Buddhism to the West. So the real question here is, what does beginner's mind mean, and how does that relate to marketing? Beginner's mind was really a key component of Suzuki's philosophy and his approach to Zen, and that was that beginner's mind is something you have to have at all times. Beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the experts there are few, which is a quote from Suzuki. What does that mean to marketing? Well, I can tell you many times that people's marketing is stifled by the fact that they know so very much about their market. They know a whole lot about the public that they're trying to reach. They know a lot about how they've marketed in the past. They know what's worked and what doesn't. And all of those things, possibly are valid. I'm not even saying that they're not. But the point here is that to really approach it from the perspective of a more meditative, if you will, a more Zen approach, is to really look at it from the perspective of a beginner. Because if you walk in and you just accept that you don't know anything other than what you can observe right now, then you might make different decisions than you might otherwise. Meaning, you might take a chance on something because it seemed like a good idea. You might not get fixated into a particular path, a marketing path that you may have been on. So it's important, and probably one of the most important lessons of this talk is when you look at your marketing and you look at what you're doing, you really take a beginner's mind. Just kind of take all the ideas you have that and toss them out the window a little bit and just look.
Yeah, and I think that's important. We were talking about this earlier in terms of some examples of that. And you have companies who have been very successful, and because they didn't have a beginner's mind, things changed and they ceased to exist. And the one that I always think about is Blockbuster, because they were so very, very successful, but they were almost too successful because when the market changed and technology changed, they lost everything. And a lot of it is because they didn't have this mindset, this beginner's mindset.
yeah, they didn't really look at, changing technology, the changing habits. I think a lot of Blockbuster's failure was they kind of had this nostalgic idea that their stores were like almost community gathering places. They were places where, and it's true, back in the 90s, it's true, you'd go to the Blockbuster and you'd see friends there and ask them about a movie. It was much more than just a place to go get a video. And what's interesting, and it'll be interesting, and this is a question for Netflix and Disney Plus and all those, will they kind of have a beginner's mind and realize that maybe there should be more of an aspect to their streaming services? And I think I've seen that with Amazon. I think Amazon now has watch parties where you can actually kind of invite a certain amount of friends who have Amazon Prime and do that. So, there's a lot of things that even those that progressed can still learn either from the past or, from the way things are changing. So this next quote from Suzuki is, "There's no other practice. There is no other way of life than this way of life." The point for this slide is really that, and another speaker at the conference mentioned this, and that is that marketing is life. There's no aspect of your business that isn't touched by marketing. There's nothing that you do in your business or your organization, for that matter, even if it's not a business, that isn't really a reflection of your marketing. Everything, like Holly said, from the receptionist answering the phone, to how you ship out packages, to how you address customer concerns, how you address customer validation, every aspect of it is a part of your business. And until you realize that that's it, that every aspect of what you're doing is marketing, and you're going to struggle, because you're going to try to put it in a box and go, okay, I did my marketing tasks for the week or the day. Now I can go focus on other things. If you're not constantly thinking about it organically as the whole subject matter, you're going to struggle, and you're going to be stressed, and your marketing efforts might fall short because you're doing all this great marketing. Say maybe you're doing some great advertising, you've really dialed that in, whatever, and then when people call the receptionist, she's rude and obnoxious. Or when you ship out your products, they arrive late, or the box that they come in is shabby and looks kind of, whatever it might be. So it's important to realize that all aspects of life is marketing, and that shouldn't be overwhelming or scary. It should be a kind of an aha moment. So as we get into the kind of main part of this presentation, there are really three parts in Suzuki's book, Beginner's Mind, that he talks about that relate to Zen practice. And the point of today's conversation is not really necessarily to indoctrinate you all into what Zen is, but it's certainly a cultural phenomenon. People talking about being Zen, or this is Zen, that's Zen. If we could just be more Zen, it's almost it's become kind of this sort of meme in life. But people don't really understand what it means, and particularly from Suzuki, they don't understand what it means. And most importantly, they don't understand what it means to marketing, because it's very, very applicable. And I hope that throughout the course of the rest of this presentation, I'm able to help you kind of maybe look at this in a different way. So the first step in Zen practice, and in my opinion, in your marketing practice, we're just going to refer to it as your practice generically, which we'll refer to as both. The most important thing in your practice is what Suzuki called right practice. And this is the foundation for your marketing system. And in Zen, the foundation of your Zen practice. And the quote here is, "Don't think too much, but don't fight thinking either. Fighting makes it worse. Do not think that someday you'll reach a stage you can just forget about it. It won't happen. Just focus on your breathing." Why is that important? What does that have to do with right practice and the foundation?
Right. So Brendan, what is breathing? What are we talking about in terms of breathing for an organization?
Well, that is probably why the first slide says just remember to breathe. And that is that, breathing for an organization is the obvious thing you think of with marketing, which is the exhale, the outflow, the the breathing out, the putting out of your newsletter, or, posting on social media, or posting a new video, or updating your website, or writing a blog, whatever it may be. That's your exhale. That's what you're communicating. That's what you're breathing out to your audience. The other part of it, which a lot of people forget about, is the inhale. Meaning, if you just exhaled, you die eventually. If you're not inhaling, you're not breathing in, you're not receiving oxygen into your lungs, things aren't going to go well for you, obviously. Same is true of marketing. You need to be listening to your public. You need to be observing how your campaign is going. You need to be focused on not just, outflowing or breathing out, but also what information you're receiving. We're going to touch on that more later, but that's really what it has to do with breathing. And the thing about don't think about it too much, and I'll touch on this again, this is probably one of the most common problems in marketing, is people overthinking it. Very rarely have I ever had a client that was not thinking about it too much. Usually they're thinking about it way too much. Is this right? Is that right? Am I doing this right? Should I be doing this? My friend said that he's doing that and that works, but I tried it, but it didn't work for me, but I only did it for a week. And, it's just, again, it kind of goes back to the earlier statement about this monkey brain of marketing, where it's just like, you're just on this hamster wheel of like ideas and thoughts. And, and in Zen practice, that's obviously one of the main things that they're working towards, is calming that down and kind of getting to a more peaceful place. So you don't want to think too much. It's not that you don't want to think at all, but you don't want to think too much. So let's go to the next slide. So there are really 3 points to right practice. One is posture. And of course, in Zen, this is the way you sit, your spine, how you align your head. There's breathing, which is important, which is, as we discussed, the focus of, inhale and exhale as a point of focus. And then control, controlling in the sense of Zen, too many thoughts, negative emotions, whatever they may be. And in marketing, it's really controlling your results. And so let's talk about posture for a second. Posture is really your foundation for your marketing, and everybody has to have this. And if you don't have these things, that's the first thing you have to address. You have to have an agreed upon standard system for your practice. It serves as your base, and it serves as your stable rock, your point of, I know these things to be true, and I know that this is what's happening. Things will happen after that, when you start to promote, but these things are in place, and these things I know to be true. What are those things? Well, one is some sort of customer relationship management tool, and that's just a fancy way of saying a database, a list of your customers. It might be something sophisticated like Salesforce as a software solution, all the way down to, I have an Excel spreadsheet of the 20 people that bought my art on Etsy. Whatever it might be, it's your base. You have to have that, and you need to be adding to that, and you need to be expanding it. You need to be adjusting it. You need to be looking at it, but that's an important thing. The second, and there's no way to get around this, folks, the second is a website or your online presence. The days are gone at this point where you don't have to worry about a website. You have to have a website. You have to have some online presence. Most people look for products, services, organizations to be a part of through the internet. That's just the way it is. Now,
I want to just jump in on that too, because it's funny because I've had conversations with people about this. Even people who get most of their business from referrals, people that make those referrals, they'll check you out. They may hear about you from their friend, but even before they call you, they go to your website. So it is, even for a referral type of basis, it's very, very key, because it makes it a lot easier for people to refer others to you.
Right. No, that's a great point. And I forget what the number was. It's like, I think 80% of people look something up online before they make a phone call, or they take it further, or they even begin to make a decision. So that's important. And a website doesn't have to be something complicated. I know a number of businesses that the totality of their website is a a Facebook business page that they refer people to. And that's fine. I mean, depending upon your business and your requirements, that may be good enough. But if you don't have a presence and it's not kept up, then there's your posture is out. There's a fundamental piece that's not in place. And then lastly is your methods of communication to the world. So, everybody starts with something. You have to have whatever that might be. Maybe you're a huge Facebook person, and so you do all of your exhaling, your breathing out on Facebook, or maybe you're an email person, or maybe you're an advertising person, or maybe you hire a kid to stand on the corner outside your donut shop with one of those signs that he twirls around, and you found that to be whatever it may be. You have to have whatever your starting set of tools. They may not be perfect. They may not even be the ones you stick with in the long run, but you have to have something in place, something that you can see and look and monitor and decide, okay. And that's where it comes to not thinking too much, because you could overthink that and never do anything. The next step is breathing, as we discussed. This is probably the most important thing to any, it's what people think of when they think of marketing, but they generally only think of the exhale aspect of it, So the quote here is, when we inhale, the air comes into the inner world. When we exhale, the air goes out into the outer world. Both are limitless. And again, that's a quote from Suzuki's book. What does that have to do with marketing? Well, I think that people don't consider enough how limitless their opportunities are. And many people get overwhelmed with the seemingly limitless ways there are to exhale in this world. I mean, that's one of the things that we find and we work with our clients on all the time is marketing was always hard and challenging to a certain extent. The digital space just made it even more complicated. There's so many options and so many factors and there's some agency out there, or multiple agencies selling you one solution over another. You should do Facebook ads. No, it's YouTube. No, forget all that. Postcards. Remember postcards? They're back. Postcards are back with a vengeance. Whatever it may be, somebody's out there selling some aspect of the solution. So it can be kind of overwhelming how many different ways there are. But I think the more important part of that limitless point is this. There's a limitless way that you can inhale, meaning there is a limitless way of understanding more better, a terrible word, a more refined way of who your public are, what they think, what they need, how you can best serve that interest. So I think a lot of folks get the exhale part pretty well, but they don't do the inhale part as well.
Right. I'd like to give just some tangible, examples of that inhale. For example, we build websites. And so we have on the back end something called analytics. And those analytics are part of what we inhale on behalf of our clients as well as our own business. So we're able to actually observe, like we talked about earlier, and see, like Brendan, what kind of data do you get when you go back and you look at the analytics for a website?
Well, again, talk about limitless. I think the limitless aspect of Google Analytics is one of the things that drives people away from it. But not only can you see obviously what page on your website most people are coming to, which is usually the home page, but not always. You can see what page they leave from, like they went to this, and then you can see their path. You can see right down to each visitor, where they went on your website, how they interacted with your website, and then what point they left. And all of that provides a tremendous amount of information for a business in terms of, wow, everybody, leaves on the About Us page without ever doing anything else. I wonder what's wrong. What is it about the About Us page? Or, everybody, one of our clients, everybody comes into the website, like 80% of the traffic comes into this one blog post. Wow, what is it about that blog post that makes that the number one place people go? And then where do they go from there? And we find that that's also the number one page they leave. So we're not bringing them along. We're bringing them into that blog post, and they're interacting with it. They're getting information, but we're not guiding them to the next part of the journey. We're not telling them the next thing. So analytics can provide all kinds of information in terms of how people are interacting with your site. And beyond that, there's things like heat maps, which is a software application you can put to your website. So not only now are you seeing what pages they're going to, but you can get a recording of when they got to your homepage, where did they go? It literally tracks their mouse movement, so if they went up here and then they went here, they only scrolled halfway down the page. All of that is recorded. You can actually literally watch little sessions of people interacting with your website. So there's a tremendous amount of tools out there, so you can now more than ever know what people are doing. And I know that's a little creepy for some people.
That is a little creepy.
I acknowledge that. I 100% acknowledge that. But as long as you're doing it for good and not for evil, which is a topic of another.
We'll get into that, won't we?
Yeah, that's another webinar for another day.
Yeah.
All right, and then I include some of the common things that people use: email, social, advertising, public relations. I added, a lot of people sort of discount public relations or don't think about it so much in terms of marketing because they seem like they're in different silos of activity. But having started in public relations and ended up in marketing, I can tell you that, again, kind of going back to the Zen oneness of it all, they're not. They're definitely, that's why I chose kind of the yin and yang. They're really two different aspects of the exact same thing, which is how are you communicating yourself to the world? And public relations gives you an excellent, not often as well understood by businesses, opportunity to communicate your values and who you are and what your brand is a little bit more deeply than just advertising or marketing alone. And we'll get into that a little bit later, maybe the next slide or two. So control, one of the things about marketing, and certainly talking to business owners for 2 decades or more, they want to control things, as any good business owner would want to do. They want to control the flow of prospects into their funnel, or customers into their restaurant, or whatever it is. And then once they get there, they want them to make the right decisions. If they come to my website, I want them to just go to the homepage and then go to the, if you're a software company, go to the free trial button, or go to the book an appointment if you're, say, an attorney or something like that. And so they want to control it, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And in Zen practice, Master Suzuki says, first, let them do what they want and watch them. You can't control them. Don't ignore them. Don't try to control them. Just watch them. And that's an important thing, because a lot of business owners will get really frustrated or really stressed out about just that, trying to control them when they can't. Nowadays, it's just harder and harder to control the public at large. It just really is. I think we've seen a lot.
You have to actually establish that. In that earlier slide, you were talking about public relations. You have to actually establish a relationship, which the only way you can do that is by really observing what's going on, and then you can adjust. But I think this is really
exactly.
a good. Yeah,
exactly. And the analytics point is a perfect example. You could spend, and I've seen, and we've had clients that have done this, and Holly knows, you could spend hours and hours, if not months, trying to construct, the best theoretical system to guide public into whatever, process you want them to be guided into to, buy your service or whatever it may be. And all that work and all that stress and all that effort can go to nothing, because as soon as you turn on the on switch, everything goes haywire. It doesn't work at all like you thought it was going to work. So that's where it says, just let them do what they want. Put up your website, put up your whatever, let them do what they want. See what they do. Walk into your store. What do they gravitate to? Do they go to the donuts, or do they go to croissants? That'll tell you a lot. Do you need more donuts? Do you need more croissants? You you're not going to be able to force people to eat croissants when really what they're looking for is a donut.
Right. So you just have to start doing your marketing, start selling your donuts, start doing whatever you're doing, and
Right.
then
And so,
see what people are, see what works.
yeah, exactly. And that's why I say, is it the same in Zen as it is in marketing? It's exactly the same. You just have to set yourself up to be able to look and be able to see. And that, there's tools to do that, like analytics, there's surveys, there's other ways that you can kind of know better what people are doing or thinking. So the next quote is, if you continue this simple practice every day, you will obtain some wonderful power. Before you attain it, it is something wonderful. But after you attain it, it is nothing special. And this is a very Zen way of saying that, as you begin whatever your marketing process is, you want something wonderful. You want your business to expand. You want more customers. You want to fulfill your organization's purpose to help children more, whatever it may be. But the most important aspect is that first statement, which is just continue this simple practice, like we've already covered. You have your posture, you have your foundation, you have your inhaling and exhaling, you're listening and observing. If you do that, and you do that consistently, and that's important, and we're going to touch on that in a minute, you do that consistently, you'll get somewhere. Now, it may not be everything you want it to be at first, but you will get somewhere. If you have a business right now and it's a real business and it pays your bills to some extent, then you've arrived there, right? The next part is, before you attained it, it's something wonderful. Before you got there, it was like amazing. Like, I know, Holly and I have started, course of our marriage, and each time
I don't know if he froze
we were
on
like,
yours
oh,
right now. So
there, it almost seems
Yeah.
nothing special.
okay, Brendan, we're going to have you say that again.
Okay, so say what again exactly?
Oh, in terms of, we just glitched out a little bit there. So in terms of before we got to the point of having our business, it was kind of mysterious and special. You froze right there. So just repeat that one line again.
Basically, that once you've attained something, it becomes not so special. And so when you're growing something, you'll get to it. You continue to do the process of growing your business. You'll get to a certain point, and then you get bored with it.
Right.
And then you do something silly like change everything or decide to launch a whole new product line that has nothing to do with anything, but it was a suggestion of a friend. So it's just something to kind of like maintain, is that once you attain it, it becomes nothing special, but that doesn't make it any less important. Okay. Part number two, sorry. Right attitude. So right attitude is the next step of this. Once you have all of that in place in terms of your infrastructure, if you will, your posture, your breathing, your basic practice, the next thing is having the right attitude about your business. And I start this with the subhead of, your brand in the Zen environment. Everybody talks about branding. Everybody talks about, what's your brand? I need a brand. I need a brand expert. They talk about famous brands like Apple or Nike. I mean, it almost gets talked about to the point of distraction. But from a Zen perspective and from Suzuki's perspective, which he wasn't talking about marketing, but I'm going to take his words and apply them to that. He said, big mind is something to express, not something to figure out. It is something you have, not something you seek. Now, what does that mean relative to marketing and branding in particular? It means that your brand is something that you express. It's not something to figure out. You're not going to figure out your brand. Your brand is inherent in the DNA of your company, of your founders, of perhaps the people that you serve. So it's really a matter of how do you express it, not how to figure it out. It's kind of the same, the sort of segues into the second. It's something you already have, not something you try to achieve. And
right. And when we're working with companies, because we were talking about this earlier as well, like, so because we do brand guides with our companies, and it's so funny because sometimes people will say, we'll ask them, so who's your client? And they'll say, oh, well, everybody needs what I do. And then what we do is we end up talking to them and just really finding out, all right, well, who is it that actually is buying this product, or who is going and getting this service? And then you can get more of a feeling of who this person is, because you find out who they're appealing to. And then you can actually start looking at the colors, and you can start looking at the font, because that's what we do in a brand guide, is we're really figuring out what is it that helps people express who they are. But we're not trying to make them something they aren't, because
I think we lost Holly as well.
Holly,
so anyway, that's an important part of having the right attitude and your brand in the Zen environment.
So Holly,
yeah,
you
no,
glitched. Sorry, you guys, Holly glitched just a little bit there too, right? When talking about that last part.
yeah,
Okay, great.
yeah. Holly, you want to
Brendan take
kind
over?
of get back to the brand guide?
Great, Brendan, you take over.
Okay. So yeah. So I mean, obviously, branding is something that you help people to find out about themselves, but it's not something you can't put it on, And I've seen this before where they're like, well, what's our brand? And and then they're going to try into brands and make a brand that matches a demographic public that they want to target. And the fact of the matter is that just doesn't work. And the only brands that work are authentic brands. And people nowadays can smell a non-authentic brand from like 2 miles away.
Absolutely.
Okay, so communication. So again, this kind of goes back to what I was just saying, which is authentic brands are Zen. If you're not trying to shoehorn some concept of who and what your organization or business is into some preconceived idea that you thought was the best way to go about it, you're going to be stressed out. You're going to have people that have to monitor, what you say, what you do. Is this on brand? Is this off brand? Now, as you bring new people in an organization, there's some amount of learning they have to do. However, it shouldn't be that hard. It should be pretty obvious. So the quote is, without any intentional fancy way of adjusting yourself to express yourself as you are is the most important thing. So really what a brand consultant should do is help you and your business, your organization, to understand better who you are and how to express that, and who that expression most benefits or most impacts. A couple other points on attitude, which are important. And one is under the subject of Zen and excitement. This is a whole chapter actually in the book. And that is, he says, it is not some kind of excitement, but concentration on our everyday routine. What does that have to do with marketing? A lot of folks are looking for excitement. And maybe even more importantly, think if this is kind of getting to be a pattern, and it's just sort of like, oh, this is what we do. If it's working, it's what you do, a lot of companies have gone completely in the wrong direction because they thought what they were doing was boring, and then they decided to change everything, and changing everything really screwed everything up. So that's not to say you can't have excitement, or you can't enjoy what you're doing. That's not the point here. The point is that it's a concentration on your everyday routine. Again, going back to Zen, it's not super exciting to just sit and try to, be calm and not think bad thoughts or whatever. That doesn't seem like, but as part of a routine, it becomes a practice, and it becomes a thing, like exercise or something, right? The next one is probably just as important, if not more important. That is the spirit of repetition. Meaning you're going to do something in marketing over and over and over and over again. And, having worked with some companies for 12, 13 years, it can be ridiculous. Like, are we really doing this again? Are we really, yes, we are. So if you lose sight of that, you lose sight of each time you do it is a new time. That's the most important thing. And I have to stress this with marketing directors at companies that I've worked with. It's like, okay, I get it. You want to do something creative. You didn't get into marketing to just, do this process. I got it. Fine. However, if you take each time you do it, even if it's the same thing, you're making the same cookies every day, but each day you make that new batch of cookies, you find the joy in those cookies and where those cookies come from or how those ingredients put together. If you are fully present, then it doesn't seem like repetition. It seems like repetition or you're getting bored. It's because you're not present, even if you are doing the same thing.
Yeah, there's a really good example. Actually, I just listened to a gentleman who won the bread baking competition of Paris, France, which is a pretty big deal because there are bakeries all over Paris that bake bread for people to buy. And what he did was every single day, he was very, very present, and he would make his ingredients and test it. And he was very much beginner's mind every single day. And even though he was a relatively young baker, usually the winners of this competition were older and much more experienced than he won. And he did it with the beginner's mind and not getting bored. He did make his process, though it was the same thing every day, he made it better. He made it better and better and better until he was absolutely the best. So that is definitely a successful action.
That's great. It's a good story. So your purpose. So again, I just want to address this thing of, and this again is a quote from the book. It's not the point to become a student of Zen. And I say marketing. It's not the point to become a student of marketing. The point is to practice and observe for yourself what you observe. You can become, there's probably, I don't know, 5 new books on the subject of marketing probably released every day. There's somebody's got a new approach. Somebody's got a new, marketing system that if you just give me $6,000 and I teach you how to do it, you'll make $1 million or whatever. And some people become a little almost addicted, if you will, to this treadmill of new information, thinking somewhere in here they're going to find some magic answer, some fairy dust they can sprinkle on their efforts to make it all work just the way they want it to. And the point is, we've done marketing for as long as I've done it. The truth is, all of those books can be distilled down to some fundamental principles that just don't change, that we've covered in this presentation. And yeah, there's new ways of attempting it. There's different channels to put your message on. But in the end, marketing and communication and public relations, they haven't changed really. There's just more ways to do it. So the real key is not to get too hung up in the details of all that, but just to do what you're doing, follow your practice, observe for yourself, and know what you observe for yourself. And that will lead you to a less anxiety-ridden, stressful, sort of marketing experience. This is another key point. And that is when your practice becomes greedy, because we're talking marketing as well. When your practice becomes greedy, you become discouraged. As long as you continue, you'll be safe. You have to find a way to encourage yourself. So from a Zen perspective, what he's talking about here is, the student who wants to, reach some sort of magical moment of enlightenment and, float 4 feet off the ground and never once have any sort of disruptive thing happen to them. Their emotions are just pure and joyous at all times. And that's
totally unrealistic.
Totally unrealistic. That's being a little greedy about what you're trying to achieve. Let's just be honest. But as long as you continue, you'll be fine. You'll get to where you're gonna get, because everybody's gonna be different. Not everyone that is listening to this is gonna become Elon Musk or somebody else, or you know, we're not all that way. And maybe not all of us even want to be that way. So it's really about finding your way. And if you continue with your practice and you continue to do the fundamentals that we've outlined here, you'll be fine. But the trick is you have to find a way to encourage yourself. You know, it's I call it, you know, like counting the wins, you know, and forgetting the losses. You have to really focus on the positive steps you're making forward, learning from your mistakes, but being present enough to learn to be gracious of those mistakes. Oh, I really screwed that up. I can't believe I thought that was going to be a good idea. And embrace it. And if you do that, then you're going to be fine. But I know that can be hard, which is sometimes why it's nice to have a marketing consultant or an agency to work with, somebody who's exterior to the real problems that you face and kind of can keep you not only encouraged, but focused on, you know, doing your practice. The third and last point is right understanding. So you have the point of your right practice, you know, having all the pieces in place. And then you have the attitude about doing that practice as you're doing it. And finally, you arrive at understanding. And that's kind of the goal of, or part of the goal of this, is to really understand what you're doing and understand how those two first points kind of come together. And there's one really critical point to this that I'm going to say now, which is another quote from the book. It says, if you think there is some other way to accept the eternal truth that everything changes, that is your delusion. And this is a common misconception with marketing people, or people who do marketing, is that they get to, or business owners, they get to a point where, all right, I've got this figured out. And that's good. Yeah. They've got their practice. I do these postcards, and then I follow up with these phone calls, and I have my whatever. They have a system in place, and that's great. But if they don't accept the truth that at some point that probably will stop working, then they're going to be stressed out. And that comes back to the concept of observing and being present and that sort of thing. Yes, you want to build a practice, but if you think that that's it, that's the extent of it, and you never have to you just put this machine in place and it just cranks out the hits, it isn't going to do that. Eventually it's going to break. You're going to have to change it to some degree.
Right. There's a couple of examples that I can think of. One is Facebook ads. They used to be much more targeted, and people could very reliably get certain results by using them. And now, because of all the regulations, it's changed. And so that's one of the areas where, if you're not present and you're just thinking, okay, I'm just going to keep doing the same Facebook ad campaign I've always done and get the same results, it's not true. So it certainly applies for marketing efforts that one is doing. And then the other place it applies too is just in terms of your product. You know, if you have a certain product, you also have to observe that, like, are there other things coming onto the market that are perhaps replacing that product, or replacing some of the people that used to buy your product are now going to that product. So it really does go back to always being very, very present, and working with people who are also very, very present, and so that you can adjust, because adjusting is important. Because what we want to do is we do want to grow. We want to grow our businesses. We want to be more successful. We want to have a better way of surviving, but we can't do that by just doing the same thing over and over and over again.
No, it's an excellent point, you know, and another example that comes to mind in addition to Facebook ads is email marketing. You know, entire businesses were built on email marketing, and then suddenly everything changed. And some people adjusted and still do email marketing very successfully, and some people just didn't, and are now kind of like at a loss, and have decided email marketing doesn't work anymore because they didn't observe and change as it was changing, but rather just waited until they fell off the cliff, and then went, oh, I guess it's broken. And then other people were doing it successfully. They're like, whatever, I guess that's just, they're special somehow, or they're in a different marketplace than I am, or it doesn't apply to me, or whatever other sort of expert, you know, non-beginner's mind opinion they have about it. So wisdom. I mean, that's obviously what you're trying to achieve in terms of your marketing, is you want to be a wise marketer. And not to beat a dead horse too much, but mindfulness is wisdom, meaning there isn't some sort of particular faculty or philosophy that you can get there. You can read every book on the subject of marketing known to man and woman. You can use certain cool tools that are out there, software or whatever. It's none of that's going to solve the problem. None of that's going to make you wise. The only thing that's going to make you wise is the readiness of your mind to be present and accept what's happening and observe, and then act on those observations. That's the simplicity of it. And if you can get to that point in your own head, then the rest of these things fall in line. It's like one of those things where, information has a hierarchy, I mean, from a software and development perspective, you want to get up at the top part of it. If you're down here in the minutia of the details of Facebook ads versus email marketing versus, that's all well and good. But if you don't have a solid position at the top of it, then you're going to struggle, and you're going to feel like you're spinning your wheels. This is probably, I think, one of the more controversial slides, and that is the headline: "You don't exist." There's a certain, I'm not going to again delve too much into Zen, but there's a certain aspect of this. But the key point from a marketing perspective is, and from Suzuki, in our everyday life, our thinking is 99% self-centered. Why do I have trouble? And the key is, as a marketing person or as a business owner, that's also true, but it's the wrong way around. Meaning, most business owners that I've worked with to this day have to be told repeatedly that their marketing has nothing to do with them. It doesn't have anything to do with their product. It doesn't have to do anything with how good it is or how smart they are or what an opportunity is for people. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is your customer, your potential customer. So that's why I say marketing is, they always say, it's what's in it for me. That is a fundamental law, no matter what you're doing, whatever you're advertising, however you're marketing. Your message is not, look at me, what I've done, check me out, I'm the best. I mean, there's a certain value to that, and there's certainly a public that will buy that. But in the long run, it doesn't usually pan out as well as most people think. Because marketing isn't about you, it's about them. So I say marketing is about them. This is a quote from me. It's not about you. Forget yourself. You don't exist. You only exist as a way of helping them. And sort of sliding to the end here, this is another sort of, again, controversial, but I think important point to make. And that is, I discovered that it is necessary, absolutely necessary, to believe in nothing. And what does that mean? That sounds pretty, that doesn't sound Zen. That sounds kind of
really dark, Brendan. What's the deal? Why is
I know. That sounds more like Nietzsche and less like Suzuki, right? But the point here is that, to the degree that you become convinced in the rightness of whatever it is you believe, you've lost track of the earlier point, which is everything changes. This isn't about believing in, whatever higher power you want to believe in. That's not the point here. But it's really the point of believing in, I do emails and emails work, or
it's like not getting stuck on anything. It's like whatever you're doing, whatever your product is or whatever your marketing is, if you're fully present and you don't get stuck on it, then you can observe and you can shift.
Right. And yeah, so you've got to be able to shift. You've got to be able to change. And part of that is sort of accepting this dark truth of sometimes it's necessary to just absolutely believe in nothing. So wrapping up here, oops, clicked too soon. Just again, the three main points: right practice, which is create your system of practice, meaning your marketing practice, pay attention to the parts, keep them steady. Second is right attitude, open your mind, be authentic, and continue your practice, don't get discouraged. And last is right understanding, which is become wise by observing what you observe and act on that and knowing that change is inevitable and you should never really believe in anything. Just kidding. And that brings us to the conclusion.
That was great. Whoops, hold on. That was amazing. A great presentation. I also was taking lots of notes and standing by and watching all the information come by. We did have a couple of questions.
Oh, great.
And so for some reason, that's okay. Christina was asking, she said that she wanted to get some examples of what does a customer do when they walk in, or she wanted to know other ways to observe customers. So you gave the example of the donuts and the croissants. And so she's like, what other ways can you look at customer activity and behavior that would help you understand where they're coming from?
Well, again, let's take a couple of different examples. One could be a retail example that's not donuts, because that's a really easy one. Let's say you have I don't know, you have a doctor's office, right? You might look at how people react when they come into the front part of your, the welcoming area of your office. Like I've been in dental offices, not picking on dentists, where I walk in and I feel like I'm just in a weird queue to be sent off to, and then I've walked into somewhere that's very welcoming, and so I think observing how your customers are reacting to the space when they approach, or do they seem put off, are they confused, do they not know, we're going to get into feng shui a little bit, which is a whole different subject, but do they know where to go, do they know what to do, is it the experience, does it make sense to them, is it natural, are they comforted by the experience, and observing that body language, facial expressions, things like that. In a less retail experience, on a website, it really kind of goes back to, like I said, things like heat maps. Like I'm a graphic designer, and I think that everything I design is absolutely the greatest thing ever. And I can tell you, I've learned many, many, many times that people found it to be an IQ test. And so they didn't react to it too well. And I thought this cool design thing was really cool, and no one even paid attention to it. So there's a lot of different ways to observe. Surveys are another way to observe, having questionnaires, like maybe after the person leaves the clinic, asking them, what did you like? What did you dislike? And what did you find interesting? Whatever it might be. So those are some ways.
So I think it's all very fascinating. And I think one of the things that I struggle with as a small business owner myself is like, what if you could tell me, so before I'm ready to hire my team, before I'm ready to hire Haggerty Digital Services, what should I be looking at or doing to begin to lay that foundation so that when I get to the point where, okay, now I need people to help me, I need a team, what can I be doing to kind of make sure I'm starting off in the right direction?
I can kind of bring that up. I think one of the things that's very helpful when people call us and they're looking for help with their marketing is to just let us know what they're currently doing, because it's part of that just observing, like, what are you doing right now? Because obviously you're in business, you've got something going on, you're doing something right. So we really want to find out what it is that you're doing right that's resulting in clients coming into your business or people buying your product. And then what part of it do you need to just turn over and automate, because we don't want to drop it, but we don't want you to have to do everything. Because the thing is with the business is that so many businesses, the owner ends up being the marketing department as well. So they're really doing two things. And so it's not that the owner can't do it. It's kind of like, it's not like you couldn't go and fix your own sink. Maybe if you YouTubed it, you could probably figure it out, but do you really have time? And there really are a lot of mechanical things that are involved with marketing that if you kind of figure out some of those successful actions, what we can do is we can actually automate it, and we can also expand it. So that's really a big thing that people can do before they approach a marketing company, is definitely take a look at what you're doing, because you're succeeding to some degree already. So I think that's it. And then obviously seeing where your clients are from already. And so those are like just before, and then obviously once we start talking, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to get more information from you, and we'll find out, because we do know the different tools that are available to you. I think the other aspect of it is your budget too, because, you know, we could do a lot for you or just a little tiny bit. But I think the way that you can help an agency out quite a bit is just deciding what is your budget. You know, how much can, you know, not play a guessing game and go, well, you know, I want a big mammoth campaign, but, you know, I have only $2 to spend on it. All right, well, so I guess part of it is just being realistic. Just go in, kind of know what your resources are, and then communicate honestly with the company that you're working with, and, you know, and then you can get the best product. Brendan, why don't you see if do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely perfect. I mean, you know, it's like when you hire an agency, it's sort of like, you know, you're really, at least I think the way Holly and I approach it, you know, you're really inviting someone inside a very, very inner circle. You know, your marketing and your business, especially when we're dealing with the businesses we normally deal with, which are small business owners, where, yeah, the founder of the company is still to some extent involved in the marketing. It's a really personal thing. And then when you get into your brand and what it all means, so, you know, you need to kind of do a self-assessment, and then, you know, find out, you know, is this a match, you know, and am I willing to really confess my marketing sins and so forth to these people so that they can help me. I mean, we've had clients where, no, I'm not saying they didn't give us all the right information, but they certainly portrayed one thing, and then as we went deeper into it, we found something completely different. So it's important to be honest, whether it's like Holly said, in your budget, or what you're doing that's successful, or what you've done that's been a complete failure. You need to be open.
Yeah.
So truly, I was to say, truly, you're a team. You become a team. So
Yeah.
you have to be open and honest with your team, as with any team. You can't, you know, sports team or anything. You have to be completely working together to get the best result.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Right. Well, this was such an interesting presentation. I really, really enjoyed it. And I think that the key there is that for me, and also thinking about in the small business aspect, and you're talking about what your bandwidth is and what your financial bandwidth is also then being able to realize when is your time worth a little bit more for you, so that you can hire someone out to do some of those things. And Holly, I love what you said about automating some of those systems. Like, you know, gosh, you just need someone to help you set that up. And that could free up so much time depending on what it is that you're needing done. So
Yeah, and it's
very,
not like
very
people
helpful.
aren't capable of doing it themselves. Our clients are really bright, and they, you know, and I know that there's a lot of information out there about how to do different things, but it's pretty time consuming. And I actually fixed my own washing machine one time because I was just like, I can do this. But, you know, it took me some time. It wasn't like I didn't do it in 2 seconds. And so I did that once, and I'm like, okay, I'm very proud of myself. I proved that I can fix my own washing machine, but I'm not going to do that again because I don't really want to do that. You know what I'm saying? So it's just one of those things, is that recognizing that you do need to have, it's good to have a team. It's good to have a team so you don't have to do everything yourself.
Right, right. Well, thank you so much. This, like I said, was a great presentation. I really learned a lot, and I think it helped me put a lot into perspective about not getting too wound up around the axle for some things. And then again, I feel like I wrote a whole bunch of notes. I'm like, you're encouraged and you're focused and you support, but to stay flexible and to be willing to pivot was kind of like the big thing that I got from what you were saying, is just like, if I feel like something isn't working, don't get discouraged, and stay encouraged, but be willing to pivot and open up your own horizons and broaden out what you think. Because as you said, Brendan, it's not about me. It's about my customers, and how do
That's
I have
correct.
to think like them? Yeah. And that's a constant thing, constantly reminding yourself about that. So thank you so much for that wonderful information. If you want to get in touch with the Haggertys, I put their links in the chat, so you have those available for you.